Welcome to Professor Sky's Spam Channel, where I talk about anything that's not new music. So just today, while I was driving into work, I decided to listen to the new comedy special on Netflix by Kroll, Little Big Baby. Little Big Boy. Little Big Boy, that's what it's called. And I had some thoughts about it. He has a very particular technique that he uses, which I haven't seen before, which I want to praise and sort of put a spotlight on. Before I get to that, I'll give a sort of brief review. I would say I'm a little bit disappointed because I hold Kroll in such high esteem. And I think he's one of the great improvisers. His work on Comedy Bang Bang is some of the best work of anybody on that show. I think his sketch show, The Kroll Show, was great. So the comedy was a little bit, a little bit pedestrian, a little bit like, when you gotta poop. Like a lot of oh boy, I gotta poop humor, which, made me laugh. I like the idea of Little Big Boy. I like the idea of the sort of infantilizing himself and the self-hatred that comes along with that. So it wasn't like it was a catastrophe. It was good comedy. It was good all the way through, but it was maybe lacking a little bit of I was sort of hoping for it to be sort of spell-blindingly good. But the thing that he does that I want to talk about today is a particular kind of callback. So, a callback in comedy is when you set something up, you tell a joke early in the act, and then later in the act, you bring it back. It's sort of a cheap trick, but it works really well to get the audience to feel like, I recognize that. I remember when you said that the first time. And he has a lot of sort of typical callbacks in this. Not a lot, but a few, So he talks about how much he loves snacks, and he says snacks in a funny voice. And then later, towards the end of the special, he says snacks in a special voice. What's more interesting is something which I'm going to call a faux callback, or an autofill callback, or an unsaid callback, where he sets something up in the beginning, and then he says that word again, but he never makes the callback tangible. He never makes it direct. He never says, I'm doing a callback. He never draws attention to it at all. So what ends up happening is that this creates a sort of atmosphere where these words have some kind of added power over your head. Like instead of it just being set up and then joke, there's an unfinished quality to it. I'll give you an example. Early on, he tells a joke about someone seeing his penis when he was in pre-puberty, and he calls his penis some kind of cashew. And then later, he has this whole jag about hating himself and looking in the mirror and having Jason Statham's voice call him a piece of garbage and saying that he shouldn't have eaten those cashews because he's allergic to tree nuts. Now, obviously, he could have said peanuts. He could have said walnuts. He could have said whatever kind of nuts he wanted to say, but he said cashew and then doesn't draw it together. So in your mind while you're watching it, I'm not going to call it subliminal, but it's sort of under the surface, it's creating this sort of importance of this term cashew to the point where when you're thinking about the self-hatred that he felt, the embarrassment that he felt when someone pulled his pants down in front of his crush, that you feel that is connected to this sense of self-hatred about eating too many snacks. Or another example, early on, he makes a joke about naming his kid Kilometer because he likes Miles Davis and he also likes the metric system. A perfect example of a fine joke, maybe not to his standard. But then later, he's making one of his fart jokes and he talks about how he doesn't know where farts come from and he thought that there might be a little trumpeter in his butt, like a little Miles Davis. So right here again, we're totally in the realm where he could easily talk about Miles Davis. He easily could have said, or Kilometer Davis, and he could have got that little joke, but instead he doesn't. There's so many of these. He talks early on about how his girlfriend dumped him because he doesn't know how to drive stick. So this ends up emphasizing the deeper themes of this whole special, which again, I wish he delivered a little bit more on this deeper theme of Little Big Boy, but still. That he gets dumped because he doesn't know how to drive stick and he's not manly enough. Later on, he's in Italy and he doesn't know how to drive stick, and this is a lot more clear that it's a callback, but again, it's never made explicit. But my favorite one, my favorite of all of them, is a certain amount of implied menace. There's actually a dark side to the one bright side of this entire special. So he talks about these facts, did you know this, did you know that? And he talks about how the person who invented Segways, fell off of a cliff on a Segway. Way later in the special. He talks about how he got married on the side of a cliff. Now what he's doing, I'm trying to use, like literary analysis, okay? This is literary analysis of a comedy special. Very clearly implied here is a menace to his marriage. What's implied here is the idea that he is actually in danger. That the whole show began with his heartbreak and someone thinking that he's just not handsome enough or whatever, not manly enough. And then here we are and he's at his happiest moment. But we have this word cliff in our head. We have like a word cloud, like a mood board of cashews and sticks and kilometers and cliffs. And cliffs mean death. So that's what I thought of while listening to, not watching because I was driving, while listening to Nick Kroll's very good, yet also somehow slightly disappointing special. But now that I think about it, maybe it's not disappointing. I just made it seem really awesome. Okay. Chupacabra. There's the camera.